this whole room was supposed to be separated from the other apartment, which means this wall and this wall and this wall and this little tiny wall here was supposed to all get done. The ceiling didn't have to get done because the ceiling is part of the upstairs is supposed to be part of this space. That's why in the future this door would be locked off from the basement tenant. This space would belong to the main floor tenant. And so that's why we don't need fire separation on the ceiling, because it's the same unit, right? But we do need fire separation drywall between these two apartments. And obviously somehow that got lost in the weeds there. Now in here, one of my concerns, I guess, is that when you come in here, like I would think that does not look acceptable. If I'm gonna do drywalling, you know, I would have taken the trim off first and done a skim coat, you know, and done my mudding so that this could be clean, and then put the trim back on after the fact so you don't have this problem. Now the flat parts of the drywall are okay, but like this here, I can see that it looks like it needed a larger fan. I think you should have had like about a 12-inch trowel and done a long mud. The mud from a corner bead, the corner bead should always be recessed a tiny bit below the level of the drywall so you can fill it. And that's why it takes like 3 or 4 coats. And this should be just one big ass trowel and you just fill it. Freaking grab it from here and then all the way down. And then you fan it from here to like here. And then it's seamless. It's not terrible for all intents and purposes on this apartment, but in terms of quality moving forward, it's definitely not going to be acceptable. You look at this here too, I can still see the tape. I can see the scratch marks from the sanding. Now, you know, this corner bead, if you had screwed it in and set it a tiny bit lower, again, you fill that, fan it out to about here. It's going to take a few days of mudding just because of the number of coats that need to happen. Like I said, you know, these inside corners are not so bad. But again, here you can see this where the trim was left on. I'm not really sure what's going on with this at all, to be honest. And again, I'm not mad at you guys. I'm not saying it's over between us or anything like that. But, you know, I would look at that and say, you know, that is not finished or it's not acceptable or whatever, you know. So that stuff like that can't happen for sure. Now in this room, you've got the ceiling, the flat parts, like your joints where the 2 drywall sheets meet. They look okay, which is nice because they have that factory edge that's set in. So obviously you were able to fan that out pretty easy, and that looks nice. I can't really see any seams, but you can see the brush stroke marks. But you guys just primed it, so that's fine. It's not, you know, when you put the 2 coats of flat white in the future, that would be hidden, obviously. But I can still see some holes in the gaps, you know what I mean? And that from the other guys that I'm used to working with, they would never leave that because they know that I would, you know, rip their asshole to 10 times the size of its current space. You know what I mean? So that kind of thing. Now, so I just wanted to point that out. The corner beading here looks okay, you know, because it's nice and smooth. I also noticed on this one, if you look down the bulkhead, it's it's got some big bends in it, as you can see, right? And I just don't think that's super professional looking either, right? You know, same with the trim up in here. And the last thing I wanted to point out is the trim around here. So the idea was that we would be able to install new floor and trim, but there's still a whole bunch of subfloor all the way around the base. So this is what we were expecting, was it to look like that.